in the border regions still.
And you're listening to Radio Free Aaron. We're talking. It's actually going to be an hour-long obituary for the provisional IRA and provisional Sinn Fein. We're discussing two books that are out now, and I would recommend getting them. Henry McDonald has Guns, Smoke, and Mirror. Anthony McIntyre has about the death of Irish Republicanism, written from their own particular points of view. Liam Clark last week wrote about the differences between the two different points of view. If you want to read that, go to Newshound, Nuzhound, newshound.com, and you'll get to read a lot of the articles that are written about these two books, and I hope they just get more airtime just to give a different point of view. And and on this side of the Atlantic, you're not even getting, say, the Adams point of view. It's just Ireland is just not discussed anymore. It's off the radar completely, and it's just very few stations that cover it.
And John, I think we should mention that you can also find Henry's articles in the Guardian and the Observer on Newshound, News News, Hound Hound, and that that Anthony has a blog, The Pensive Quill, which is updated several times a week, and you can go to that. And Anthony, your book is actually published in the United States. Can you tell us who published it?
It's published by the very efficient Subaru Press, and Aoife Serrano Rivera is she's in charge of the operation, and she came over to Ireland to launch the book at the Leadenhall Derby. Henry, I'm very grateful to attend the launch, and we had a good turnout, and we were able to advertise and promote the book. It's strange, because I had been writing for years on this thing that got to maybe 15 years, and it was an American publisher that took the interest. I tend to feel that over here in Ireland, they want a nice type of book about the peace process. For example, I would rate Good Friday, the death of Irish Republicanism, and it wouldn't be welcomed. Or if Jerry Adams was to write, he's written two autobiographies about Napping in the IRA.
Well, they're in the fiction section of Barnes & Noble.
Well, that's where they should be. Absolutely, but unfortunately they're not. And they would be selling for them, and people would be buying them. Why would I want to go in and buy a book written by George Bush telling you that he'd never been in the Republican Party or he'd never been president?
Well, it's interesting that just in terms of the kind of postmodern politics, the kind of de-ideological kind of situation we're in now. In the same week that Anthony's book, in the same period when Anthony's book and my book were published, there was a book that came out from Stormont, and there were contributions from members of Sinn Fein and others. It was a recipe book of members of the Northern Ireland sending me their favourite recipes. And I remember thinking, my God, have we come to this? Has it come to this that, the terminus of the last four decades of carnage ends with the political rivals who hate each other joining forces together to tell the world.
Please don't tell me they're going to be like Gordon Ramsay and start now fixing up restaurants and giving out IRA recipes.
Or Hamas and Likud joint cookbook, Did you see that,
Well,
no, not in the near future anyway.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, reportedly at least, I can't prove this, the IRA owns quite a few restaurants and pubs and other things. That is, as they say.
There's no harm in being a gourmand, better a gourmand than a...
Well, Henry, what do you think the difference is between your book and Anthony's book? Even though you're tackling the same subject, what's the angle that you're coming from?
Simply because we're coming from different angles. I come from an angle that I don't think the war should have ever been started, okay? I think it was an immoral and futile war from the year dot. I haven't said that I can understand why young men and women joined up.
But would you consider 1916 an immoral start to that war?
I think actually 1916 was a mistake. I really do. And on reflection, I do. I think Ireland could have achieved what it's achieved.
But yet you don't mind NATO troops in Afghanistan.
Well, I think there's a big difference between, and let's get into a bit of controversy, between the situation in Ireland and the Taliban being in charge and young girls not being able to go to school, and a state being used to launch attacks on countries such as the United States, which is what happened on 9/11. So I'm not a 9/11 conspiracy theorist. What happened is what happened. But So that's the difference. Is I think that I take an axe to the root of the ideology, but at no time am I personal. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are Republicans who went through the H blocks and through all the hell that they went through, and I have a lot of time for them, and I think many of them are victims as well. Many of these people's lives have been shattered, and I think, Anthony, there's an interesting academic research to be done on the psychological impact of the last four decades on the people who took part and who are at the centre of it all. I think that's a very interesting study that hasn't been done yet. What do you think about that? I'm just interested.
That group, AXPAC, the Ex-Prisoners Assistance Committee, run by Tommy McCurney, has done some work on it, and he's been arguing about trying to promote material on combatants, former combatants, and his research into the impact that it has had on them. He's also been pushing an area, and that covered now people who have been relocated or exiled as a result of the conflict in the north, displaced people who have moved into the south of Ireland and who didn't get it easy. And I've actually done a review of it, which will appear in the Panther Quill very shortly, quite an interesting booklet. And the AXPAC again with Adrian Grounds and Ruth Jamieson published a document called the Effects of Long-Term Imprisonment, and it dealt with the impact on people who have been in prison for a very long time as a result of this conflict. So it's groups like this, like AXPAC are doing this, who are not getting finance effectively. They're limited finance from the European Union or the Irish government or the funding bodies, but the amount of finance that would be taken, required to do that type of research isn't coming through. And Henry's right, it should be getting done, but it's not.
All right, you're listening to Radio Free Aaron. We have about 10 more minutes with Henry McDonald, has a book out called Gunsmoke and Mirrors, and Anthony McIntyre with The Death of Irish Republicanism. I wanted to get from both of you, I don't know if you've seen it, we're talking about books, I want to go to film that covered that time frame. And there's a movie coming out here in the United States called Hunger. I know it's been in the theaters in the United Kingdom and in Ireland. Have either one of you seen it, and how true to reality is it?
Well, I mean, I wasn't in his flux, so I don't know how true to reality it was. Firstly, as a work of art, it's an extremely good film. It's beautifully shot. It's almost it's almost iconography in it. It's like a religious film in many ways. In terms of, I mean, there's a bit where the prison warder carries Bobby Sands' body after the death, and I immediately thought Christ being taken off the cross and being put into the tomb. It's like that. Now, it's not a criticism. It's actually an observation of the style of the film. In terms of the content, although it lacks a wee bit of backcloth and background, I still think it's a very fair film. It is not a eulogy in terms of the IRA or anybody else. There's a horrific murder scene of a prison officer, which is quite ghastly. Again, it lacks a bit of political context, but as a work of art and as a depiction of a man dying for his ideals, I think it's a very, very good film.
And Anthony, have you seen it?
I've seen